Hi, hello everyone, and welcome to this webinar centered around the influence of data on your investor relations. I am Marie Galmiche, Digital Marketing Manager at Praexo, and I'm going to give you an overview of this webinar. So we'll spend the next 45 minutes discussing what NLP is and its various uses in the financial sector. You have at your disposal a chat that should be on the right side of your screen. So if you have any question, please feel free to ask. We'll try to answer them during the last 15 minutes of this webinar. You have the option to ask questions either in the chat for everyone to see or under the question tab anonymously. All right, it is now time to introduce our speaker of the day, our chief data scientist here at Praexo, Alexis Perrier, who will be hosting this webinar.
Hello.
Hi, Alexis.
Hello.
So at Praexo, we have designed a SaaS solution for companies, which offers a digital communication channel between companies and investors. And Praexo offers a simple tool to anticipate investors' expectation in a clear and sympathetic way. So what's the current state of the financial market? The financial markets have evolved significantly, and this is mainly due to three factors. First, the technological changes that have completely reshaped our world, the markets, the relationships, and the processes. Next, the different regulations that are redesigning markets, such as MiFID II, for example, that dates back from 2018, which has led to changes in the role and involvement of brokers and their intermediaries. And finally, like you all know, the health situation that has forced individuals to adopt new methods of interaction, and above all, has accelerated the need to digitize tools and processes. For example, there has been a boom in virtual meetings between investors and companies as part of roadshows or even IPOs, to just name a few. So the role of investor relation officer is evolving and changing. We believe that its role is becoming very strategic. Indeed, they are faced with a growing need for qualitative information, and investors are more involved than ever in the strategic decision of companies. We believe here that the solution is to focus on digitization and the management of investor data, and this is what Alexis will talk about. Alexis, I am handing over to you.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you, Marie. So my name is Alexis Perrier. I'm in charge of all things related to data here at Praexo. And as Marie just mentioned, at Praexo, we develop solutions to improve investor relations with a simple goal to facilitate the flow of information between issuers and investors. So we started from three observations. The role of AR is rapidly evolving, we all know that. We have more and more information to take into account. That's true of every kind of domain. And we also have some kind of old school management way of dealing with investor returns. By old school, I mean manual tools, emails, conversations, sometimes an offline process. Okay? So at Praexo, we focus on three main areas. We want to qualify the company's equity story. We want to improve the investor targeting. And mostly, we want to empower IR departments in their daily management of investor relations. In short, we help them to get the job done. So our main focus here is on the exploitation, the qualification of investor feedbacks. And that's what makes us and that's what makes sense to talk about NLP today, because investor feedback is all about text and conversations, which we can transform into text. So how can we make the most out of the information contained in investor feedbacks in the main theme with NLP? And that's going to be the main theme of our presentation. So first of all, the agenda. What is the purpose of NLP? Okay, we'll talk about what is NLP, what is its purpose, how we can implement it, and how it is particularly adapted to the financial sector. And finally, we'll talk about Praexo Solution for investor relations. So what is NLP? NLP stands for natural language processing. Basically, it englobes all the techniques that enable us to automatically exploit text. So there's many things in that bag. That also includes speech, with techniques such as speech-to-text and text-to-speech. But in this presentation, we'll stick to text. Okay? One thing that really, why am I talking today is because NLP is really fun. I really love NLP because it's all about text, and text is never constrained. By its nature, text can take many different forms, whether it's songs, tweets, texting, and even quarterly revenue reports also. So here we're dealing with infinite variations, and it's very human in the end. So a lot of challenges that goes with NLP, and that's why it's fun, basically. So NLP is totally ubiquitous. We have it everywhere, every day we use NLP without even realizing it. Okay? So for instance, if you search, so I'm going to do a demo here, hopefully the whole thing will break over. If you do just a search on Google, of course, it didn't do the search where I wanted it to do. Hold on. So I lost the... Hold on just a sec. I'm struggling with the two things. Okay. So here we have a search about, Elon Musk, Warren Buffett, for instance. I think that's more appropriate, maybe. So what happened? We have a lot of results. All these results basically found a way to make the result, the content of the page, relevant with respect to the query, whatever query we inputted. And also, the Google engine identified that we're talking about a specific person. And then it came up with all these extra information on the right. Mostly it comes from Wikipedia, but other places. And also something that's really useful and that we see on Google, but we see it also on other search engines, and other now in Gmail, in many tools, we have completion. Auto-completion is very, very useful. So if we want to say, for instance, something like how many, it will suggest several things to look for. How to find, sometimes the results are funny. Oh, yeah. Here we are. Anyway, moving on. So that's search. So this search product that we use every day is really a thing with NLP at its core, in its all minutiae and all power. So hopefully, if I find, yeah, it works. Great. So we have auto-completion, we have spelling when we write Word documents, Google Doc, we have dictation when we dictate on our phone, captioning when we watch Netflix or YouTube. The captions are oftentimes automatically created. We have also translation, of course, that really, really improved. I don't know if you've noticed, but it really improved in the past 6 months, a year, 2 years maybe. So it's a fastly evolving domain with a lot of innovation, and we see, and every day we see that it works better. And one thing that really came up recently, we've been talking about that for years, but really came up, is everything that's written automatically by artificial intelligence. So if you read something today on your phone, online, newspaper, that kind of thing, maybe there's a chance it was written by an AI. Sometimes you still have human in the loop, but it's becoming something more and more common, and we'll see a demo of that later on, which is really interesting. So basically, NLP, there's a lot of things behind NLP. I mean, it all seems a bit magic, but in the end, you can do most of these things that I showed you, that we talked about, that that you experience, with 3 main tasks. Text classification, classify text, we'll see examples. Specific information extraction, you want to know the names of the persons, the companies, that kind of things. Or text generation, and that's really exciting. So let's just take a few slides, a few moments to dive into each, to see examples of each one of these tasks, the core task. So in terms of text classification, you've probably heard about sentiment analysis. Sentiment analysis is very common, and it's simply the task of having some kind of, sorry, there's noise in the street, but of having a review from a user about a product, a service, a movie, and seeing, okay, was the user happy, not happy? How was the review? Was it positive or was it negative? And sometimes, was it neutral? Okay, so you're in a binary or maybe a third-class classification kind of text. It's mostly a solved problem. We have powerful training data sets. We have models. A lot of services offer that right out of the box. So it's easy to implement. It's a solved problem. And nowadays, I would say the difficulty lies into finding doing intent classification. Will the person buy or not buy, etc., subscribe, not subscribe, or emotion analysis, that kind of thing. So sentiment analysis, easy, done, 2 categories, 3 categories, that's cool. Another text classification task, which is a bit more difficult, depending on what you want in the end, is basically identifying the topics of a given text. So if you have a text, such as one we could come upon, about catalysts wanting to buy, positive news flow, that kind of thing. If you read the text, you understand that it's about buy side, valuation, earnings, that kind of things. So that's easy for us. It's a complex problem on multiple fronts, in fact. First, you need, if you're in the global problem of understanding if a text is about common themes, such as sports, cooking, music, whatever, that kind of thing, it's easy. You have services online, you have things that work for you. But if you want to be much more granular, it's going to be more difficult. Because first of all, you need to define what kind of categories you want to have, you want to detect in your text. And that could be, a large number of categories. Then you need to find a lot of examples of these sentences, of these pieces of text that belong to that category. So in the end, you can train models that can, do things for you. So building an ontology, in fact, a specific proprietary ontology, is a more difficult problem than just sentiment analysis, and we'll come back to that because it's really key. Okay, so enough with the classification. Now we have a text, a news brief, and we want in that text to be able to identify the name of persons, their roles maybe, the companies, dates, numbers, etc., or more specific elements, job titles, financial snippets, ratios, EBITDA, that kind of thing. Okay? So this is called name entity recognition, and it's a bit of bee, like, you have a bee foraging into text, going from here and there and finding the good snippets of information. So here's a demo, demo with it's a great library. It's a Python library called Spacey. It's one of the best library that people use in NLP, and it does a lot of things. But here we can use it to do name entity recognition. So I chose a text, news brief, really taken by randomly. It was not optimized before, about Glaxo, cancer drugs in the US, Europe, having that kind of things. You can read the text here. So we put the text in Spacey. We select a proper model here, English, because the text is in English, although we could detect that, but and we say, okay, we want to know about the person, the organizations. GP stands for geopolitical organization. So that would be the countries, and LOC is the places, the location, products, and that kind of things. And it works quite well. It's a simple text. I didn't choose the text they provide just to see how it worked, And we see that we have dates, companies, Glaxo. It found ITOs, also a company. It found the locations, Europe, US, I think. No, US geopolitical entity. Okay, that's fine. And also, there's one thing it didn't really get. It got the name of the drug, Jempoli. It didn't get that it was a product. It found it was a geopolitical entity, a country, which is a bit weird. But it's not so bad. It's to be expected because we didn't tell the model to look for cancer drugs. Okay. One thing very important here is that we're not keyword-based. I mean, we could have a list of all the products of Glaxo, and just look for these names, the product names, in any kind of text. But that doesn't really scale, because if you're looking for the names of people, you can't have the list of all the names of all the people all over the earth. Okay? So you need to find statistical models to be able to pinpoint, okay, given the context, this is going to be a product and not a country. Okay. So that's name entity recognition, very fun to work with. We're already looking at something that, it works, but it's not that, it's never 100% accurate. Okay? So it's becoming interesting. Other things I talked about, text generation, and that's really the breakthrough right now that's happening in NLP. You may have heard about models such as BERT, GPT-3, the kind of things that can really write stories, music, code that is nearly as good, sometimes better, depending, that human can write. Okay, and at least it becomes very, very difficult to understand if the text was written by a statistical model, AI, or by a human. So that's interesting. We're really at the forefront of innovation, and it goes super fast. Now we have also translation. We used to have something, if you use Google Translate a few years back, it was okay. It was okay. Now it's become really good. There are new tools such as DeepL, which is really quite amazing. And also we can do translation from any language directly to any other language. We don't need to go through English and then retranslate. Okay? So that, because the models are becoming really, really big and efficient and quite amazing. You have summarization and paraphrasing. So that's very interesting, because it may seem, okay, yeah, you can summarize the text, but okay, why not? I know my kids use that absolutely all the time for their homework, and their grades have improved, and I don't think the teachers are really aware of what's out there in terms of online services that can do rephrasing or paraphrasing, summarization of a text. So that's interesting. And well, of course, you have Q&A. So Q&A we use to, the support service, the client support on your bank. You have a chatbot, it's dumb, it doesn't work. This is not it. This is having a huge corpus of technical information, important information, complex information, and you just ask in a natural way to a bot, to a model, and the model will not only get you the info, but rewrite it so that it answers to your question. So it's way more than just a bot or just a keyword-based search engine. That's really we're advancing at the forefront. Just a quick demo about text generation, because it's really funny. It's really nice. That's just one of the different. I have to copy paste the code, the text. Sorry. So let's say, for instance, we start a sentence with the third choice: a bolt-on acquisition strategy is. And what will happen is that the model will create a whole story. So let's do it. You know this better than show you. Custom prompt, boom. Okay, that kind of, it could be any kind of sentence. And it's going to start writing something that kind of makes sense. And that's really what's astounding. I mean, so we could try other ones. Okay, let's generate another one. So this is random. Of course, every time it takes the few words, the beginning of the words we gave it, and it will basically find what's most probable to happen. And you can even tune the fact that it's going to be more or less creative, more or less random, that kind of things. But if you add some constraints, then you can have something that's really, really useful, beside the fact that it's really fun. I mean, if you just do, just another example that is less serious maybe and more open. Today I would like to, and who knows what's going to happen. But we can use that to do things that are much more serious, much more useful in a company setting, in a investor relation setting. So done with the demo, you can try that. So NLP, just to sum up, what it comes down to, oh, sorry. Yes, I have to close. Thank you. Sure. Yes, thank you. So NLP, what it comes down to is text classification, sentiment analysis, ontology, topic extraction, information extraction, finding the names of places, people, companies, etc., text generation, that kind of things. How do we implement, actually, make it work? How do we implement it? Well, we have two main strategies, and a third one, which I will talk about later, because I was writing and I said, no, that's the third one. On one side, you have cloud technologies, cloud services. When I say cloud, it's Google, Azure, and AWS. And on the other side, you have everything that's related to in-house development. We'll see. So what is cloud technologies? It's just a service. It's a SaaS service. It allows you, it's built on huge models, very generic models, but very efficient. And it allows you to have a fast proof of concept of whatever product, whatever service you want to implement at your company. It's low cost, at the beginning at least. But at the beginning it's low cost, except if you have like huge amounts of data. And it's pretty reliable, it's secure. I mean, I know that AWS, for instance, deal with health data in the US, so they have everything in place to make sure the data is totally secured and safe. That's an important point. But it's better suited for, tasks that are in the generic broad domains. I was saying, sports, cooking, music, that kind of thing. Yeah. Not always, but at some point, it's not going to scale. It's going to be relevant enough to investor relations, for instance. So that's one side. The other side is in-house development. That's where you hire people. You get the data. You collect your own data. If you hire people, you need resources. It's a significant investment. It's costly. It takes way more time to get into the proof of concept or having some kind of minimal viable product. Of course, there's more risks, maybe more rewards, hopefully. But the thing is that it's much better suited when you're working in a very specific domain, sector, such as healthcare, legal, equity, that kind of things. Okay? So it's not totally overlapping. And of course, the third way is to use the solution of a provider like Praexo, which specializes in a certain domain, investor relations. So that's why I said there's two ways, but no, we're the third way. So back to Google Cloud. A demo in a minute. As I mentioned, we have the main ones. There are others, but really the main ones, at least in the Western world, Google Natural Language, Amazon AWS Comprehend. That's the name of the services they offer. Microsoft Azure Language. It's quite easy to put in place for mid-level developer. There are others outside. Baidu is super strong in Asia. Yandex is strong in Russia. There might be others I'm not aware of. So these are the only players, but these are the ones accessible, at least from Europe. So a demo of one of these services, it's called Google Natural Language, well named. And it gives us entity recognition, sentiment analysis, topic identification, and also, so all things we've seen, and also part of speech tagging, dependency parsing, that's more grammatical analysis of the sentence. It's less interesting for us. So let me just copy paste the text I wanted to test, not to use their own text, it's too easy. And we click on this link, and ta-da, we're on the demo page of natural language from Google. So this is the demo page, the demo text. I will probably have a captcha. I have a captcha. I've been here before, so it should recognize me. Yes, no cactus or sidewalks. So the text is Praexo, same text as before, just to keep the, to stay coherent. But it talks about Emma Walmsley, who's the chief CEO, in 2017. Also another company name, oncology drugs on the market, etc. So what it gives us, first of all, is the entities. So we talked about that before. It's not the same kind of entities, but we still, there's more. The therapy area, there's pipeline. Other words stand out as important in the text. That's super useful. But we still have the name of the person, Emma Walmsley, the Wikipedia article, if it exists. Wikipedia is something in NLP that is extremely important. It basically fuels a lot of models, a lot of tests, a lot of data sets, that kind of thing. So that's why you see Wikipedia all the time. I love Wikipedia. It found a person, the role, chief executive officer, that kind of thing. Okay? And also there's a score salience about the importance of the name, of the term, the token, related to the whole sentence. So really one click. Sentiment, well, it's not a very positive or negative, polarized sentence, but we can see, the first sentence, Glaxo has been expanding in the lucrative field since Emma Walmsley took over as chief, well, it's pretty positive, and Google tells us it's 0.3, so it's usually ranked between -1 and 1, -1 being negative, 1 is positive. The whole sentence is pretty neutral, which is always often the fact in financial news brief. Of course, they're not like super excited about things. And that's going to be interesting for us, because if we have sentiment analysis that is way more fine-tuned, fine-grained, that can do some analysis that is more fine-grained than what we have out of the box, we can find, we have interesting information from that text. That takes a lot of text. Okay, so sentiment analysis, I'll just show the syntax because it's beautiful, but what we did in high school, in school, middle school maybe, verbs, nouns, etc. And more interesting, the categories. So the thing that I was talking about, it's talking about something, it finds that it's about health. Okay, fair enough. It's not about companies, it's not about CEO, someone becoming the CEO, all that, but it's okay. But it's really out of the box. I mean, you can do that programmatically with Python in 2 lines, 3 lines of code, 4 lines of code. Okay? So that's what we get. I will remember to close the demo page. Yes. Excellent. Okay. So as I was mentioning, on this text, it told us it's about health, but it didn't tell us anything else. Of course, it's about health. It's about one of the biggest conglomerates in healthcare. But if we have a text like that about diversified strategy in terms of geography, verticals, talking about nursing homes, whole care, which is typically the kind of text you have from investor feedback. Okay? It talks about a company, about its strategy, etc. First of all, we understand, as humans and investors in the IR field, what it talks about, and we have the proper information. But if you give that to Google Natural Language, it tells us no categories found, try a longer input. And in fact, it's not about its default error message, but it's not about having more text. It's about this model, this service, not being able to identify what it's really about. And for us, that's where the whole cloud strategy falls short, because we need to be able to understand what's going on in the text. And we'll see why in a minute why we need that. Mary, your turn.
Just 2 points very quickly. Don't forget you have the possibility to ask questions either in the visible chat or anonymously under the question tab. So we'll answer them at the end of the webinar. And also, you can take a look under the poll tab. We have put some questions there, and we would really appreciate it if you could just take some time to go through it. It's going to stay there for the entire length of the webinar.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I had forgotten the
That's
question.
all right.
The beautiful
No
question
worries.
marks. Yeah. Okay, so we know basically what NLP is about. We have some tools available, and I've been talking on and off about data, a bit less about algorithms, and don't worry, I'm not going to talk too much about that, and models. I've been talking a lot about models. So just to understand how everything fits together. So first of all, we have this raw data. It comes from absolutely everywhere. We'll talk in a minute, but basically it's in your emails, it's on your database, it's online, it's on some company's website somewhere, etc., etc. So you have this raw data, which is really far from being pristine. It's more like a bubbling pit of mud, okay, than a glistering castle on a hill with fluffy unicorns. It's really something heavy. Okay, so you need to take all this data and cleanse it and make it organized and label it and tag it and make sure that basically you can fit it to the next step, which is the algorithms, which is lots of pipes, knobs, and whistles everywhere. So we won't dive into that. And in the end, once you mix the two and you've done enough work and your data is sensible, makes sense, you have trained models. And that's what we did when we were on the Spacey example. We chose the English model because our text was in English. It was in English. There was some other stuff written about the fact that it was small. There was a number of the model, that kind of thing. But you get trained models in the end. And what you have with the demo I just did with Google NLP, it's the same thing. They train their models on humongous amounts of data. beyond the web. I mean, they have so much data on us. So at least they're able to train great models and give them to us for free, basically. Okay, so you have these trained models, and that's true whether it's Google or whether it's your own data and your own projects. If we want to do that in-house, we still have to collect the raw data, clean it, train an algorithm, and get trained models that we can apply to name entity recognition, text classification, sentiment analysis, and all that. Okay, so it's the same process for everyone. Some are more equal than others in that field. So if you look at that, you would think, okay, data is messy, chaotic, but the algorithms look really mean, nasty, and complex. But in fact, as you may have heard, the problem is always with the data and less about the model, the modeling, the fact of tuning the algorithms. It's complex, but we know how to do it. The data comes in, and the text, as I was mentioning at the beginning, comes in many shapes, many forms. It's infinite, it's dirty, there's typos, whatever. So once you have this text, when you're working on text with NLP, you have to collect the data, first of all. If you want to work in, to build your own data set in your own domain, investor relations. Once you have that, if it exists, you clean it, you format it, etc. You analyze it so that you make sure that you have the right data. And then comes the biggest obstacle, I would say, in the whole process of doing things on your own is, it's not because you have, in order to train a model, I mentioned that before, you need to show the model a lot of example of the thing it wants to predict. So if you want to do a sentiment analysis, positive, negative, you have to show a lot of sentences that are positive and a lot of sentences that are negative and a lot of sentences that maybe, are in between. Okay. So you need to label it. You need to label your text. And to do that, there's no really other way. There are things people are working on. It's not super efficient yet, but you still need people. You need human to look at each sentence and say, yeah, it's positive. Yeah, it's negative. Yeah, it's talking about merger and acquisition. It's talking about market segmentation, that kind of thing. And that takes a lot of time, a lot of efforts. And this whole process of working with the data is where the value is. It's not about, we'll see in a minute, I'm talking ahead, but it's not so much about the algorithms and the models and the things. We can do that. Getting the data is difficult. Just another thing about the data. Once you get a data set, okay, you have a third party giving you a data set, you subscribe to an online service for a data set, Translate, PageBook, Bloomberg, whatever, others. You have a lot of assumptions. First of all, before even you collect the data, you imagine that the data will exist, which is not always true. I mean, we don't have lying around tons of books on, tons of text on investor feedback. It's not something that's available in the public. Okay? Then once you have it, is it pertinent? Is it relevant? Can you understand it? I worked in banking where you get the, other places too, where you get the data set and you have actually, basically no one really understands what's in the data. So that happens. Also, things that can happen is that you get data, it's in the shape of an Excel file, so far so good, but the Excel file is 1 gigabyte large. And it's very difficult to open that with your laptop. Okay, so it doesn't mean that you have the data that can actually process it. Then, of course, that it's good quality. What you're looking for is not absolutely 90% of it is missing, that kind of thing. And on top of that, you have the icing on the cake, GDPR, security, encryption, and all that. So data is really, really a problem to tame. I love the lion. It's Mary. Thanks, Mary.
Yeah, data, yeah. Don't we?
Absolutely, tame the data. That's the thing. So another thing about data, which is interesting, is that you have a lot of data. Okay? We all have a lot of data, but you have a lot of data. At the same time, it's everywhere. As I was mentioning, it's on emails. It's on company databases, data lakes, data vaults, data whatever. It's closed inside. It's on poorly designed or well-designed website, but it's somewhere on the website, and all the website don't have the annual fillings at the same place. Or it's on social media, which can be even worse. Okay, so you have a lot of data, but it's everywhere. It's messy, it's chaotic, and you don't have the time or the resources to work on that data and make it exploitable in order to train your own models. It takes a lot of resources, basically. So just to close on this taming data, but I think that was a very important point, is that taming data is not easy, but it's key. It's really key. And however, as I mentioned it quickly at the beginning, at some point, the models and the algorithms are available. They're all here, and they're all here, I would say even freely, in a free ways, meaning that the licensing between the libraries, the Python libraries, the coding libraries, the models, BERT, GPT-3, which are given by, BERT is given by Google, GPT-3 is OpenAI, which is a huge artificial intelligence consortium. They're available, they're often available for commercial exploitation, which is super important, and they're basically free. Okay? Some are licensed, but it's affordable. They're super efficient, they're very well documented, which is important, they're reliable, and highly optimized. So it's really everything here is allows us to work on the data we have to collect to work in our domain. Okay? I'm talking about models, but I'm talking also about, I was mentioning coding libraries. There's really a lot of things out there that's just here, available. Okay? So that's great, because when you start working in NLP, you don't need to start from scratch. You just, as we did before, you download the model, it's been trained on gigantic corpuses, it's really available, and you apply the model to the text. I had an example at one point. Really, to do sentiment analysis with one of these models, you just say, get me the model, here's the text, what's the sentiment? 3 lines of code, it works. But as I mentioned before, it's not going to scale, it's not going to be relevant to our very specific domain, which is investor relations, or other domains. Some people work it somewhere else, happens. And this is where the difficulty arises. And we saw the demo with Google NLP. Well, at some point it can tell us that the news brief about Glaxo is about health, but not more than that. And if we gave it the thing about verticals and strategy, and I forgot what was exactly in the text, but it's not going to be able to tell us much. Okay, so we need to collect our own data, we need to train our models, we need to fine-tune everything, etc. The good news is that we don't have to start from scratch. Having these huge models given by Google, etc., would require resources that few companies, and really few companies in the world, have, in terms of computing powers, in terms of human resources, etc. So we can take these models. Something went bleep. No, it's okay. Okay, maybe it's my computer. So we can take these models, get our own data, make it so that it's exploitable, and just fine-tune the huge model with our own tiny data, and then we have a model that is tuned to our own needs and own projects. So that's really, really important. I mean, this process is called fine-tuning. It's common. It's what we will do, basically. Okay, I've been talking a lot about NLP. Now let's talk more about NLP and how it benefits to investor relations in a way. So just taking a step back about NLP, basically what it gives you is that it allows you to capture the information, synthesize, condense it, and also it allows you to anticipate. Basically, what I'm thinking about when I'm talking about that is ESG controversies, activism, that kind of things. You can anticipate. You can span the web and see that some things are brewing, and then you can have some alerts around that, and that's doable with NLP. Okay? On a more functional level, you have 3 things that are really nice with NLP. Is that it's fast. I mean, the data, as long as it's coming, it's processed real time, and the information stays really up to date. Okay, it's also coherent. every bit of text is processed in the exact same way. We humans are very biased in any kind of topics, and I'm not saying that the model will not be biased, because it's a whole subject that we're not going to talk about right now. It all depends on what it was trained, but at least it's going to apply the same, the same method, the same analysis to every kind of text, and it's not going to depend on who looked at the text and who summarized the text, or who extracted something from the text. So there's no room for human bias in that sense. And then, of course, it's precise. I mean, if you have huge documents, long documents, you can read it. You can read only so many of them in the day. You don't want to miss information, and NLP model will be able to, won't get tired, basically, which is good. So, of course, one other thing, when you dive into it, one thing that's really nice is that you can have hundreds of news items per day, thousands of news items per day, and the NLP models will help you, handle it. Whether it's industry, company news, research reports, there's so many things that are coming every day, and not even talking about social media, that it's difficult to stay abreast. So with an NLP model, you can make sure that basically it decouples, it boosts your analytical power, which is really, really important. Nice. And of course, as I mentioned throughout the webinar, it helps you enrich and organize the data. So we had this, this news brief about the CEO of Glaxo. And from that, you extract their summary, a lot of information, precise snippets, precise items from the text, extra metadata. Is it positive news? Is it ESG related? Something like that. And all that you feed into a dashboard. And here you see a beautiful dashboard of Praexo, of the Praexo solution. So then suddenly from raw text, you have something that is actionable and that you can take decision of. So you become data driven, basically. But it's not possible until you have milked everything out of the text at first with NLP. Another thing I briefly mentioned is the ability to anticipate something like ESG controversies. I know it's a big topic. This is about the recent announcement a few months ago, I think already, by Elon Musk, who said that Tesla was accepting bitcoins, cryptocurrencies. Obviously, this is a problem because the environmental imprint of cryptocurrencies is not compatible with having a good ESG rating for Tesla. So in the end, Elon Musk said he didn't accept Bitcoin anymore. So that's the kind of controversies you could detect in advance. Same thing about Amazon, working condition in Amazon frameworks, houseworks, place of work, and that kind of things. So that's something you can use NLP to leverage, to get this thing. Another example, in your day-to-day, during roadshows, you can leverage NLP throughout the event, from the contacts and exchanges with the investors, where everything is transcribed. Then it's centralized, it's analyzed, and after that, you will have the possibility to define, decision, to define data-driven decision. It accompanies you all along the roadshow. And finally, something else that is important: if you're looking for investors as a company, you have to know what are the key issues of concern to these investors. So in a way, it's like know your customer. This is know your investor. It's not the same goal, but it's the same idea of, okay, what are the elements, what are the information related to the investor that will allow me to say, okay, this is the best investor, this is a more potential investor compared to another one. And so that's also something you can do because you're analyzing all this text, all this incoming text, etc. So back to investor feedback, which is our main thing at the moment. Praexo, we have things in preparation, but this is our main focus right now. So basically, our starting point at Praexo is that was absolutely convinced that AR data is strategic for the company. Okay? Praexo is there to answer the problem of quantifying and qualifying these investor feedbacks. We have a SAS application, which helps IROs gain control and autonomy over transaction workflows to obtain direct financial and non-financial feedback. And with that goal in mind, we designed a simple, qualitative, and synthetic tool to improve IR's time management. We provide you with a dashboard with data visualization, which gives you a global vision of your investors, new and current. And all that from an NLP point of view, which translates into several things. So basically, we have tools optimized for financial content because our models have been trained on relevant financial corpuses. We have topic classification, sentiment analysis, entity recognition, everything I talked about throughout the webinar. We can also track the evolution of key information relevant to investors, and also anticipate, the surge of anomalies, or identify investors who are outliers in the sense that they have a different opinion on certain things than others, than the main ones. So that's how it translates into NLP. Well, so basically, this concludes the webinar. During this webinar, I've been trying to explain the usefulness and inherent challenges of NLP. In the end, it all comes down to having the right data to train models that are specific to your industry in order to process information faster than your competitors, faster than your peers. And a Praexo will allow you to control your data, and will provide you with a tailor-made solution that leverages the information you exchange with your shareholders. And all that thanks to our proprietary models. And importantly, also, you don't need to hire your own team of data scientists, which can be nice. Okay. To sum up, so thank you very much. I don't know how we're doing on time. We have time for a few questions. Thank you very much for your attention during this webinar. I invite you to contact Juliet Shaw, whose email is on the screen right now. We've seen today how technological innovations drive progress in investor relations, and as a direct consequence becomes a truly data-driven role. And with Praexo, use data as information and have a better, smarter way of interacting with your investors. We'll be happy to discuss how we can implement our solutions. And right now, let's go through any questions you may have at this point.
Yeah, I did receive some questions, so I'll just put them in a chat.
Yes.
If you have access to that, you should.
Yes. So what are the questions?
So I'm sending the first one out.
Oh, where is it?
I can read it if you want.
No, I lost the... Hold on, I'm lost with my windows. Just a sec. Questions? Yes.
Yes. So the first one is out.
Okay.
In the chat.
In the chat. Sorry, it's in the chat. Yep. It's in the chat. Okay. As far as I understand, your main activity is the analysis of investors' feedback. But do you have any other objectives? Yes, we do. Absolutely. We are working also on being upstream from the relation of the investors, and allow you to have, we're working on a tool that allows you to identify new investors. So something that is basically like a recommendation system in a way, if you want, about who are the right investors for you, but also based on this whole NLP workflow and added value. Okay.
So a second question.
Can I model? Yeah, sorry. Can your models works on past investor feedback? Absolutely. We are totally able to to integrate, to upload any kind of investor feedback you give us in any shape or form, and use it in your space in our application. Is the solution built for investors themselves? Yes, for investors and for investor relations. We have two sides of the application. One is specifically dedicated to the investors. For that, more on that, because I'm the NLP guy here, I will let you contact Juliet.
One more?
Yes, I can see the theoretical aspect of your approach, but how does this translate into practice for me as an investor relation officer? Yes, really, the theoretical was just a way to specify, to make it more concrete of what's going on under the hood. In practice, it's really about quantifying, qualifying investor relations, investor feedbacks, and being able to transform that, as we saw several times, into real action points, information, transforming data into information, and from that information you can take actions and you can take decisions, basically.
So I think that's our last question coming up.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, last question. So how will an algorithm react to different information between two sources when collecting data? There's two sides to this question. Basically, the algorithm will be able to handle is trained on huge volumes of data. So the fact that several sources have different information, different numbers, that kind of things, is not going to be a problem. It's not going to be able to find everything correctly, but it's a statistical model. We're not aiming for 100% accuracy. So it's not really a problem for the training of the model. However, in the solution, on very specific data, on your data, we want to be able to understand who said what, basically. So this is absolutely key, and it will allow you basically to go back to the verbatim of the text that was, the information that was given, basically.
All right.
Another one, Stuart. Sorry. Do you plug in other platforms that capture feedback? We don't actually plug in things, but we continually, using exports, imports, it shouldn't be a problem. And really, we're here to find a solution on that kind of technical plug-in, basically. No problem with that. Shouldn't be a problem.
That's
great.
Well, there are a few other questions, but they're really product related. So for any question product related, Juliet Cho is gonna contact you by email, because Alexis is our data guy.
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna say secret things. She won't be happy after that. So.
Yeah. So she might be more specific in her answers. So no worries if you ask a question we didn't answer. We will answer to you by email for sure, ASAP. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you,
well, thank you very much.
Yeah, it's about time we wrap
hopefully
up.
We'll get back in touch in some way or another.
And feel free again to contact Juliet Cho if you have any questions, or if you're interested in a solution. She'll be more than happy to answer any question or interrogation that you have. So thank you for attending, everyone, and hope to see you next time.
Yep. Thank you. Bye.